Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can create this animation using physics in Blender. And it's essentially just a sphere rolling down a ramp and jumping into a cup. And this is what it looks like rendered. And I will take you all the way from the very beginning through the rendering process. Alright, now let's go ahead and get started. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. I am using Blender 3.0.1, but this process generally works in pretty much any version of Blender. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Now, first thing we're going to do is build the ramp. And to build this, first thing I'm going to do is add a circle. Add, mesh, and then choose circle. Now, I want the ramp to start up here and then kind of go down and then up like that. See what I mean? So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically grab, G for grab, and then move this to where I want the top of the ramp to start. It doesn't have to be perfect, just something along these lines. Alright? Now, I want to rotate this so that it's just ever so slightly angled to the right. Alright? Now, we're going to go into edit mode. Press tab to go into edit mode. And at this point, zoom in on it so we can actually see it better. And then press A once or twice, the letter A once or twice, until nothing is selected. And then come up here to wireframe, check that. And the reason why we're putting on wireframe is because we want to be able to select the top half and actually select through these vertices so that we can select the back vertices also. So in wireframe, press the letter C to go into circle select, and then left click and select everything above the center point. Alright, now you see it's selected the top part essentially. Now I'm going to press delete on the keyboard and choose vertices. That way it's leaving us just the bottom half. Alright, and you can kind of see how that's the contour of the ramp. Alright, now press A to select everything. And at this point, go ahead and zoom out. And I'm just going to press E for extrude. And see, I'm going to rotate these each time just a little bit too. E for extrude. It doesn't have to be perfect. E for extrude. E for extrude. And once again, rotating it just a little bit. E for extrude. And I'll probably go there. And then this one, I'm going to rotate it back the other direction. E for extrude. E for, well, actually, Control Z. I need to rotate this one just a little bit. E for extrude. Rotate. E for extrude. Rotate. E for extrude. Rotate. And I'm just creating a basic shape of the ramp at this point. E for extrude. Rotate. E for extrude. Rotate. Alright. Not perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but what we'll do at this point, we'll press A once or twice, however many times it takes to select everything. And, well, actually, we're going to do this outside of edit mode. It does a better job in my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and press tab to exit edit mode, and then come over here to the modifiers tab and choose subdivision surface. Alright, now see how the shape kind of smoothed out? It's actually adding more vertices to this, but because you have it set to optimal display, you're actually not seeing as many. Alright, that's really the only difference. You're seeing the basic shape at this point, but you're not actually seeing all the vertices, which is fine. And this right here is probably a good amount. And because we are dealing with physics, we need to apply this. It will get kind of glitchy if we don't and now we see all the geometry. Alright, now let's go ahead and turn this back into solid view, and we can get a good idea of what it looks like now. But it of course is completely, you know, flat, thin. There's no thickness to it, so we need to add some thickness. Add modifier, and then come down here to solidify, and we'll add some thickness right here, and we'll add it to the bottom. See how if we go this direction it makes it thicker from the bottom, but if we go this direction it makes it thicker from the inside. We want to make it thicker from the bottom, so we'll set this to about 0.15, but you can set it to whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And again, and also check even thickness. I don't think it will make a difference on this particular one, but generally speaking, even thickness for almost everything you do when it comes to solidification. Alright, now we need to apply this because this will be a physics object, and physics objects need it applied or it gets kind of glitchy. Alright, now we need to turn this into a rigid body object. So with it selected, come over here to the physics tab and click on rigid body. We don't want it to be an active object because we do not want this to fall with gravity. We want it to stick static in space. So we're going to set it as passive, which means it's going to be a rigid body object and it can affect rigid body objects, other rigid body objects, but gravity will not pull it down. Alright, so I'm going to keep it set to set it to passive, and then down here we want it set to mesh. It will have to be set to mesh. If you set it to anything else, it will not work correctly. Alright, because mesh, it's the more complicated or more compute intensive way of calculating the physics, but it's actually calculating it based on the actual geometry, the actual shape. Wherein like box, it calculates it based on some kind of box shape around it, and for an object like this it obviously would not work. And the closest one that would work is convex hull, but the difference between convex hull is, see like the shape, the convex portion you see right here, it will treat the physics going straight across from peak to peak. It does not calculate any convex portions, so it will not work in convex hull, which is why you have to use mesh. Alright, now let's go ahead and add a sphere. So right now the point of origin for this is all the way up here. So just to make this simple, I'm just going to press Shift S and choose cursor to select it. That way it will put the cursor right here, and then add mesh, and then choose sphere. And that's that. I just done that simply so it would put this sphere right here whenever we created it. And now I'm going to just kind of zoom in and see how small we need to make this. Probably 0.75. So press S for scale and then 0.75, enter, and that's probably about right. Yeah, okay, that's about right. But we do need to move it forward just a little bit. Grab X and just move it to about right there. Just enough to keep it from falling off the edge this direction. Alright, now since this sphere is a rigid body object, we need to apply the scale. All of these say 0.75 when they should say 1. All physics objects should say 1 on all three of these. Otherwise, it could get glitchy. I don't think it's as much of a problem anymore with the newer versions of Blender, but I know with like 2.7 something, 2.6 something, it really affected it. So, but I just get into the habit of it because who knows, it may still affect it. Control A, and it doesn't hurt to do it anyway. I applied the scale. All these show 1. I know it's not going to glitch now. Alright, now with this sphere, we need to set this to a rigid body. Keep it active. I'm going to raise the weight to about 10. And instead of convex hull, I'm going to change this to sphere. But changing it to sphere will help it just roll more smoothly. Alright, now let's go ahead and add a ground. Add mesh and then plane, and we're just put the plane up here, which is fine. We're going to scale it up kind of large. Doesn't have to be anything in particular. And I'm just going to press G for grab and grab it, put it down to about right here. Doesn't have to be perfect, just somewhere around there. And obviously you can see that the scale is not applied, so let's go ahead and press Control A and apply the scale. And we'll set this to rigid body and then set this to passive, because this is going to be the ground. And we can set this just to the default convex hull, which is fine. Alright, now let's add a cup for this sphere to drop into. Add mesh, and we're going to start off with a cylinder. And the cylinder is up here. Let's press press G for grab, and then bring it down to about right here, and press S for scale, and then 2, enter. Alright, now let's press, right now this is going to be a physics object, so let's go ahead and apply the scale. Control A, apply scale. Alright, now press tab to go into edit mode. Come up here to face select, this button up here, face select, and then select the top portion or the top face, and then press delete, and then choose faces. Now we got something resembling a cup. Alright, now I'm going to press Alt A once or twice until everything is selected, and then press G for grab, Z for the Z axis, and then just bring it up above the floor. We just want a little bit above the floor at this point so we can work on it. Now, a regular cup, we want to add a little bit of, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to do a little, let's go ahead and do it this way. We want to add a little bit of a bevel in here. That way, it's kind of smoother transition to this bottom face. So, let's choose Edge Select. And we'll just select one of them, and then press hold the alternate key down, and then select it once more, and then that selects the entire edge. Alright, now press Control B, and then just drag your mouse out until you see a little bit of bevel about the size you want, which is about right there, and then just roll your scroll wheel up to add more cuts. Probably 2 cuts or 2 mouse wheels worth of cuts is fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can put as many as you want. It's not really going to affect. It's just going to affect how it looks a little bit. And then press tab to exit edit mode. Now we want to solidify this so that it's a little bit, so it has some thickness to it. So come over here to the modifiers tab, add modifier, solidify, and then we'll make this go solidify outward instead. We'll go to minus 0.25. That looks about right. Maybe minus 0.2. Alright, and then choose even thickness. And since this is a rigid body object, we do want to once again apply it. Alright, now let's bevel these edges up here just a little bit, just to make it look a little smoother. So press tab to enter edit mode, and just like before, select one of these edges, press Alt, and then select it again. Now press Shift Alt and select the inside so that you have the entire edge on the inside and outside selected. Now press Control B to bevel it, and then just bring it in about like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then press tab to exit edit mode, and then come up here to object and make this shade smooth. Alright, so now it's kind of like a cup. And we could also make this glass. Let's go ahead and make this glass. Go to the material selection, click new, and then change this from principled to glass. And set the roughness to about 0.05. Alright? And make sure this is completely white if you want it to be clear glass. Alright, now let's move this basically down until it's right up against the floor. G for grab, Z. Alright, have to zoom in a little bit so we can see it better. G for grab, Z for the Z axis. And just until it's just barely touching the floor, which is about right here. Now, what we need to do at this point is make this a rigid body object. Come over here to the physics tab, rigid body, change it from active to passive, because again, we don't want gravity to mess with it. And being that this does have a convex structure to it, we do need to put this on mesh. That way the ball can actually fall into it. Alright. Now, at this point, we're pretty much there. We need to see where this ball is going to go up and land into. That way we know where to put the cup. So press play. Alright. We know it's going to come down right here, so let's press G for grab, or select this and press G for grab, X, and then move it to about right there. Alright. Now go back to the beginning. Try it one more time. And this time, the ball should fall into the cup. Oh, it didn't. So something changed. I don't know what exactly happened here. Oh, there it is. It just didn't look right. For some reason, I didn't see the ball in there at first. Maybe I'm just going blind. Anyway, probably need to set this to about 350 frames. Go back to the beginning. Come up here to this tab, the Scene Properties tab, and go down here to the Rigid Body World. Go to the cache settings and set this to 350. Alright, now just click bake, and it should take just a second to do this because it's very simple simulation. And let's press play once again. But see how there's no bounce to it? We want to change that so that it has a little bit of a bounce to this. So with the cup selected, come over here to the physics tab and go to surface response and go to bounciness and set this to 0.5. And on this sphere, go to the bounciness, set that to 0.5 also. And we'll see what that looks like. But first, we need to go back to the rigid body cache settings and click delete bake. Now, let's go ahead and click play, and we'll let it play through because it's also doing the physics while it plays in preview. Of course, it didn't have no bounce to it, which is weird. Alright, let me try this again. Maybe I need to set this up a little bit higher. Go to the sphere in the physics settings, set this to 1. I have a feeling it's a cache issue instead of a settings issue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over here to the physics, or to this tab, and then change this sub-steps per frame up to 11. I'm just doing that because I know it will force it to flush the cache. And if it's going to bounce in the cup with the settings, it will now. There you go. It looked a little bit more realistic. Yeah, there we go. That's about right. Alright. Now I'm going to click bake because I kind of like the way that looks. Alright, we already have the cup set to glass. We're going to go ahead and take the ramp and also make it glass. So come over here to select the ramp, come to the materials tab, and then we'll make it the same material as the cup. Alright, now the floor, I'm just going to make that kind of a excuse me, I'm going to make that kind of a glossy black color. And let's give this roughness, set it down to about 0.1, and that's pretty much it. Now I would suggest coming here to the world properties tab and then creating a background and using an HDRI. You can go to HDRI Haven to get some backgrounds, because this right here sets up, it's basically an image that you put that creates like a world type environment image in the background. So if I was to click render at this point, you can actually see the HDRI in the background, see the shells, and that's the HDRI. But you can get a whole bunch of HDRIs. It doesn't do you any good to use one higher than 4K in size. 4K works just fine. And that right there basically helps you set up the lighting, in my opinion. Now, you can see right here, I need to, because you can see the geometry of the glass, or this ramp, which means I need to go ahead and go back to 3D view and select the ramp and go up to object and then shade smooth. Now I'm going to see if that causes a weird discoloration. It may not. Yeah, see how it's got this black kind of weird color right here? If we want to fix that, all we have to do is come over here to the modifiers tab, add modifier, and then choose edge split. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to slot 2. Click render image. See how it looks totally different now at the end. Looks way better. And we could swap between them, see how much it changed just by adding that. This looks basically like garbage, and that looks way better. Alright, so that's what we needed to do. So let's go back here and let's set up our camera. Go ahead and select your camera, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and if your camera doesn't zoom in like this, come over here to view and uncheck camera. What's it say? Camera to view. Uncheck that, and then you can zoom in like this, because if you have this checked, it will zoom in like this. See what I mean? See the difference? So I'm going to zoom in so that this camera view takes up most of the viewport, and then I'm going to check camera to view, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and I'm going to drag this over to about here. Now with this camera selected, I'm going to go over here to the object constraints tab, and then add object constraint and choose track to. And the reason why we're doing that is because we want the camera to look at the sphere and automatically track the sphere. So right here, just select sphere. Now the camera is looking directly at the sphere, and if I press play, it will keep track on it. Follow it all the way into the ball or into the cup, and then that's it. Now let's put this on wireframe, and we'll back up and see at what point the sphere stops moving, which is about right there. So really about 300 frames is all we need. Set this to 300. Alright, now let's set up from some depth of field. And since this right here is as close as this sphere is going to be to the camera, we'll use this as a location to set up depth of field. Alright, so come up here to the camera tab right here. Since you have the camera selected, then go to this camera tab and check depth of field, and then choose focus object, choose sphere. That way it's focusing on the sphere. And we'll set this starting off at 0.5. Alright, let's render a frame. Actually, before we do this, let's go ahead and file and save this project. And I'm just going to give it this generic untitled name, but name it whatever you want. I'm just doing that so we don't lose our progress if for some reason Blender crashes. Alright, now let's go ahead and render image. And I can tell you, see how we kind of have this black look on this cup? We need to do the edge split on it also. So let's go back to 3D view, select the cup, go to the modifiers tab, and then edge split. Alright, now let's go back to the camera. Let's render image. It just barely did change it, if anything. Alright, now let's go ahead and give this sphere a material. I'm just going to give it like a chrome ball color. So I'm just going to click on the sphere, go to materials, click new, keep it set to principled, go to metallic and set it to 1, go to the roughness and set it to 0.1, and that's pretty much it. Of course, I do need to go back to the 3D viewport and go to object and choose shade smooth. Alright, now we'll render it one more time. Render image. Alright, good enough. Alright, now let's that's actually pretty much ready to render at this point. It's not the best of animations, but it's mostly just teaching you some of the process. Alright, now let's go to the whatever this one's called, render properties. That's weird. I've been using Blender so long and I don't know what most of these tabs are called. I just look at the icon. Alright, now we want to 128 samples is probably about right for this scene, and probably set the noise threshold to 0.01 is fine. And on the denoise, I'm going to use open image denoise. I like it better. And choose albedo and normal. Set it to accurate. And motion blur, I definitely want motion blur on. Because let me show you what motion blur is going to do. Let me go to a frame where we're going to have some good motion blur, which is right there. I'm going to render this image. You don't have a lot of motion blur, but let me go ahead and turn off motion blur so you can see what it looks like. Alright, it's not much different, but you can see it a little bit. You can especially see it on the glass. There's a little bit of motion blur, but you're not going to see it on the sphere because the camera is tracking the sphere, so it's everything else that's going to be blurry, but the ball isn't. But I still like it way better with motion blur turned on. Alright, now let's go to the actually turn motion blur on, and then go to the printer tab, and I have mine set to 2560 by 1440, but if we're going to do it in full HD, which if you have a slower computer you may want to do that instead of this, go 1920 by 1080. Now let's make sure our depth of field is set up right. I kind of skipped over, I got distracted by something else. So let's choose the camera. Let's once again, well, we can actually just use the viewport for this, and we need to add more depth of field. So come down here to the camera tab with the camera selected up here, and then change this to 0.1. That's probably about right, 0.1. You can see how it blurred out the background. If we set it even lower, 0.01, that's going to be way too bokeh-y. But I mean, that still don't look bad. 0.05. Actually, I like that. 0.05 for this. Of course, your scene may be different because you're not following along exactly. The size of your objects are going to be different than mine, but you know, it's all going to be pretty close. So probably about that 0.05 would work, but you have to make that decision for yourself. All right, now go back to the printer tab, and we got our resolution set. Now let's set an output location. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to name this Toot. Enter. Go into it. Accept. I'm going to go turn off the render preview, and since we have the location set, let's go ahead and change to the format. You can keep it set to PNG. PNG is probably one of the better ones to render or save the output images to. I'm just going to use JPEG for the most part. It works fine for what I use. You can leave placeholders set if you want, but I would suggest turning off overwrite, just in case you have to stop it for some reason, and then when you restart it, you don't want it to overwrite what you already rendered. So go ahead and uncheck overwrite. But again, you can leave placeholders turned on, it don't matter. And make sure this is set to 100% and RGB. Alright, now that's pretty much it. And at this point, we're pretty much ready to rock and roll and get it rendering. So I'm going to press File, Save, and I'm just going to click Render Animation. Actually, if we want to speed this up a little bit at this point, we can do one thing to speed it up. I'm going to press Escape to exit out of it to stop the render, and I'm going to come up here to the top one and come down here to Performance, and I'm going to check persistent data. Now I'm going to click Render Animation once again, and see it started off at frame 4. Now it's going to render quicker because it's not having to reload the same data into the GPU every time. It's just using this. It's using persistent data. It's retaining the data instead of dumping it and reloading it, dumping it and reloading it. And of course, this right here is going to take my computer, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to render. Probably between 10 and 12 minutes to render. I'm going to let this go ahead and do its thing, and I'm going to fast forward as it's going through this process. Alright, looks like it's just about finished. Got 2 more frames to go, and then it will be finished. Alright, now the whole reason you output, the whole reason in my opinion it's best practice to output into images instead of video is because if for some reason your computer crashes, if you output it in images, you can keep all the work, all the rendering that you've done up to the point where it crashed. Whereas if you're trying to output the video, if it crashes, you got to start all over. Alright, so let's go ahead and preview or view the animation, see what this looks like. View animation, and it will kind of go through and load it, and then it will play it in real time. Alright, at this point, you know, since you have it outputted in images, how do you convert those images into a video? Well, I'm going to press File, Save, and then I'm going to open up a new project. Alright, Now I'm going to click on this tab and change it to video sequencer. Alright, now I'm going to add image sequence, and I'm going to select all the images that I just rendered, and right here, the order you see these in, that's the order it's going to add the frames. So if I put it in, if I click this line up here, it will put them in backwards and the animation will play backwards. If they're counting up like that, it's going to play forward. If I clicked on date modified, it's going to do it in a weird way, or if you put it in size, it's going to kind of randomize it. So you want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like that, so it will play it forward. Alright, now press A to select everything, add image strip, and set this to 300 since there's 300 frames. And then come up here to the printer tab, go to the output. I'm just going to let it go to this location, Blender output, and then instead I'm going to change this to a video format. I don't know what I was thinking. I got distracted by something. Cat's doing weird things. But anyway, I'm going to set it to FFmpeg and set the encoding. I'm going to set it to MPEG-4. Use H.264. Instead of medium quality, I'm going to go to perceptually lossless. And encoding speed, I always put it on the slowest, because slowest will spend a little bit more time trying to compress it more efficiently, but without losing any quality. Hope that makes sense. It will not have no audio, so I'm just going to keep it set to no audio. And that's pretty much it. Now you do need to make sure up here the size of this output matches the size of your frames, which in my case it's 1920 by 1080. Now there's a possibility that, because in these newer versions of Blender there's a little glitch, and if the glitch shows itself, in this case the image frame won't quite fill up this entire output frame that it's creating. So I'm going to go ahead and click render animation, and the glitch didn't happen this time, which is good. Normally before you add the image sequence, go ahead and set your frame size, and that will keep the glitch from happening. But if you set your frame size over here before you add your image sequence, it won't glitch. Sometimes it will glitch if you do it after the fact. It just happened not to do it this time. But anyway, let me open up that file location, and here's the output of the video. It's not even quite 6 megabytes. And open it up. There it is. Simple enough, right? From start to finish. If you have any questions about how to do any of this, let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to try to help you. Guess that's it. Later, people.